Azumanga Daioh is a comedy anime and manga series created by Kiyohiko Azuma. It was originally serialized as a manga in the Dengeki Daioh magazine from 1999 to 2002, and shortly afterwards it was adapted into an episodic anime series by JC Staff, which aired throughout 2002 on Japanese television. Both the manga and anime were translated and localized for the West by ADV Films, and it quickly became a cultural icon in the realm of Japanese media. In its heyday, this series was incredibly widespread, and it's even gone on to define a part of the internet itself. For example, in case you're wondering where the term waifu came from, that term comes courtesy of Azumanga Daioh.
My wife.
It also became incredibly pervasive on 4chan, with screenshots and references to the series constantly popping up on the site's various boards, and the series itself consistently making it onto several anime recommendation lists from the site. It was everywhere at one point, but sometime later on, it was slowly and surely forgotten about by the general public. Its fandom has significantly diminished in size over the years, and nowadays the series is really only remembered by those passionate few who still care. Now I know what you're probably wondering. Diamond Miner Studios, why are you rambling about this seemingly random, unremarkable anime? Isn't your channel solely dedicated to reviewing video games that you play? Those are fair questions, but I never said that I'll only talk about games on this channel. It just so happens that once I made the switch to review/retrospective type content, video games are most of what I wanted to talk about. However, as I said, I'm not talking about a game today. This time, I'm doing something entirely different, yet still something I hold near and dear to my heart. With the 20-year anniversary of its anime adaptation approaching pretty quickly, along with several others making very well done retrospectives on the series themselves, I thought there was no better time for me to make my own video on Azumanga Daioh and express my love for the series. There really does seem to be a sort of resurgence in its popularity starting to occur, so like I said, the time is nigh to finally give this awesome series the love it deserves in video form. Also, there's a few things I need to establish. First, I'll exclusively be focusing on the anime adaptation. I haven't read the original manga, nor do I plan on doing so anytime soon, honestly. I already don't watch anime particularly frequently, so reading something when I already have enough on my plate in terms of college reading? Yeah, no thanks, I'll stick to the anime. If you're gonna say that my opinions are invalid just because I didn't read the manga, yeah, piss off. Really, nobody cares. JK, just kidding, I love you guys. Oh yeah, and if you're wondering why the footage on screen always has subtitles on it, it's because I watched the Japanese version off the DVDs I have. Ripping the files off the DVDs wouldn't work in Sony Vegas. Trust me, I've tried. So I had to capture them the same way I do with my video games, and there's no way in hell I'm watching an English dub with Hillbilly Osaka.
I am Okasuga, and I come from Osaka. It's a pleasure to meet all of you.
So I'm sorry to anyone who's bothered by it, but you'll have to bear with it for the sake of this video. Okay, with that out of the way, now we can get this fucker started. Just kidding! I need to give some background first. To start, we have to go back, and by that, I mean way back. Ever since I was very young, I was never really a die-hard fan of anime. That's not to say I didn't watch any anime at all. I was a big fan of Pokemon back then, so naturally I watched the anime series on Cartoon Network, as well as many of its movies, especially the Ruby and Sapphire series for whatever reason. I also distinctly remember watching the Beyblade, Digimon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime adaptations whenever SpongeBob, Phineas, and Ferb Pokemon were known, and I think I might have seen Dragon Ball Z sometime? I might be misremembering that last one because of memes and YouTube poofs from back then, but the point is that I was not an anime fan by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I would often go along with what many on the internet said, often dismissing anime or otherwise making fun of it. However, deep down, I was undeniably grabbed by the medium in a way that's difficult to explain. As for how I discovered Azumanga Daioh itself, it's actually a very bizarre way that still makes me wonder, what the hell? Why did it happen like that to this day? So I was browsing the internet one fine spring night back in 2015, or 2016, I'm kinda losing track, and I was looking for something I found absolutely hilarious at the time. Creepy Burger King memes. Go ahead. Get it out. Feel free to laugh. So anyways, I was looking at this stuff for some reason, and came across some really, funny ones, I guess. Like this one. Oh yeah, and this one. Or how about this one? And finally, the reason why I'm talking about a rapist version of Burger King in an Azumanga Daioh retrospective, this one. Yes, the image you're looking at right now is the entire reason I even found out about Azumanga Daioh to begin with. I owe my discovery of this amazing series to a sex offender variant of Burger King. Now isn't that just swell? Anyways, yes, I saw this image, and after inspecting it a little bit, I found out that the girl in the picture was named Yomi, and was from a series called Azumanga Daioh. Since I'm a loser with nothing better to do, I then looked up the series name on the Trollpasta wiki, which was recently brought back from the dead by the way, so that's cool, and some of my other than favorite websites, and would begin to familiarize myself with it, finding out that it follows a group of girls through their lives in high school. Hell, I even made a shitty illustration of one of the stories from the wiki, which I thankfully no longer have. Thank you, younger me, and got a comment from someone with an Osaka profile picture saying, beautiful. I even made a spoof of the series with Wilford Brimley, also known as the Diabetes Guy. I don't know why I remember this crap, but suffice to say, I now knew about the anime, and I soon entered a cycle of forgetting about it, and then finding something related to it and remembering it for a little while, which happened at least once a year. However, I never actually got around to watching it, because 1, I had no means of doing so, and 2, even if I could, I wouldn't want to. 2016 was the year I was entering high school, and if I watched this series, there's no doubt in my mind it would be all I'd think about the whole time, because my idiot dumbass brain makes connections like that. And hell, that already happened somewhat during the times I remembered the series and its premise throughout my high school career. Can you imagine what would have happened if I actually watched it? Anyways, 2020 was somewhat of a different year. Well, in more ways than one, but I'm exclusively talking about this anime here. I'm pretty sure I went the entire year without thinking about it once, and I entered college in the latter half of the year. However, once the new year passed and the second semester of the school year was in full swing, I crossed paths with the anime once again. Shortly after this, I finally decided to cave in and watch this anime that had long intrigued me, and actually found the whole thing available to watch on a YouTube playlist. Classes were cancelled the next day because of snow, so there was nothing to lose. Thus, I spent that night and the following morning binge watching the entire series. I was admittedly a bit anxious going in, but about 11 hours later, I came out absolutely loving what I had watched. All that glowing praise I witnessed the series receive over the years wasn't misplaced, and I realized my interest in all this time wasn't for nothing. Alright, for real this time. I'm about to get into the meat and potatoes of this video, the part where I actually discuss Azumanga Daioh itself. Ooh, took me long enough, didn't it? Oh! Probably cut that out. Cut that out of the video. You already know that I adore this series, but now I'm about to get into why I adore the series. This is gonna be a really long one, so grab a snack and get comfy because I'm going all in. I'm leaving no stone unturned here. That said, let's fucking do it. Why not kick this thing off with the thing that's immediately apparent at first glance, the series aesthetics. I'll keep this rather simple. This anime is so goddamn beautiful! Seriously, it's so unbelievably gorgeous, and it makes my eyes melt from how great it looks. This may seem strange for me to say. Anime as a whole is notorious for supposedly having stiff movements and recycled bits of animation, and the general art style it has is rather polarizing. However, I find that Azumanga Daioh doesn't suffer from these problems. Yes, it does undeniably have a few moments that are recycled, but so do many other animated series, even Western ones like The Simpsons. As long as the show in question is entertaining, it's easy for me to get over this, since I'm aware of just how fucking expensive animation is, and these series often have low budgets. With that said, the animation of Azumanga Daioh is nowhere near as stiff as some people may have you believe. The characters are incredibly expressive, capable of a wide range of crazy facial expressions. I also love when they drift into surrealism, because they get really creative and bonkers with the backgrounds and colors. This is also doubly impressive since the series was animated by JC staff, who apparently have a reputation for producing less than stellar work, at least from what I can gather. The thing I really love about this series' aesthetic, however, is the art style. For one, the backgrounds are always absolutely gorgeous, and are rather detailed and colorful. I especially love it when cherry blossoms or palm trees are involved. It should come as no surprise that these backgrounds were drawn by none other than Studio Ghibli themselves, creators of such works as My Neighbor Totoro's Spirited Away and Howl's Moving Castle. That's also not to mention the character designs. They're simple but effective and all have subtle details that fit their personalities, with everything from their proportions all the way down to the shape of their eyes. Additionally, they're all charming and cute as a button. Except for Mr. Kimuro. He seems like a frickin' weirdo. I would never be his friend. Ew. But in all seriousness, Azumanga Daioh is absolutely gorgeous to look at. I wouldn't go so far as to call it the most impressive piece of visual art ever made, but it looks very nice for what it is. They're not kidding when they say traditional animation holds up. It ages much more gracefully than CGI ever can, and depending on the piece, it will always look beautiful. I'd say Azumanga looks far better than CGI works released around the same time, including stuff like Shrek, which by the way is my favorite movie of all time, and hell, even many video games from back then, like Luigi's Mansion or Halo Combat Evolved. I know, kind of a strange comparison, but that's how I feel. So yeah, the series is very nice visually, and musically, it's just as great. This series' soundtrack is truly something special. The production music that plays throughout isn't as instantly iconic as that of, say, SpongeBob, but still very fitting for the atmosphere and tone this series has. Some songs are more upbeat, while others are slower and more calming, and they only enhance the respective scenes they're heard in. There's also the character themes, which are rather catchy on their own, especially one of Osaka's songs, Time Pavement. What really makes this series' music stand out, though, is the introduction and closing themes, which are both amazing in their own ways. The intro, Sora Mimi Cake, is widely known and has been parodied and spoofed numerous times. The song is supremely catchy and establishes the lighthearted, carefree tone of the series itself perfectly. And that's not even mentioning the closing theme, Raspberry Heaven. Oh my god, this song is amazing and is easily my favorite track from the series. It's just so pleasant, uplifting, and heartwarming. It truly is wonderful. I really don't know what else I can add. The music of Azumanga Daioh is fantastic. I don't think it's as headbangingly catchy as something like the soundtrack of Sonic Adventure 2, nor is it as multi-layered as the music from many of the Mario games or plenty of other TV or film scores, but it holds its own. Truthfully, this is one of the main reasons I don't feel the need to read the manga. I just can't imagine this series without this soundtrack, and it would be incomplete if it wasn't there. And that does it for my discussion of the aesthetics. They're phenomenal on their own, but they're really only there to sweeten the deal. The actual series itself is, as I've hinted at numerous times, an absolute joy. It has quickly become one of my favorite things ever, period. It also, and I don't mean to sound overly dramatic, helped save my life at one point. I'll get into that later though. In case you're unaware, Azumanga Daioh is part of a genre of anime known as slice of life. Technically, you could argue a wide variety of shows fall into this category, but this term is usually only used to classify the anime that are under this umbrella. Slice of life manga and anime follow a cast of characters, most often female, as they live out their daily lives, all the while showing whatever situations they get into. There's rarely any real tension or overarching plotline, and these anime instead aim to be funny first and foremost. In short, they're essentially the anime equivalent of cartoon shows. Azumanga Daioh is easily one of the most iconic and well-known examples of this genre. You could even say it's a codifier of sorts, and many know it as the original slice of life, since it's what popularized the genre initially. It's centered around a cast of girls who attend a high school English class, and it explores their daily activities and how their personalities affect these activities. It also dips into surrealism every now and then, as I said before, particularly in dream sequences. The series doesn't have an overarching plot, but this doesn't bother me as it's not the central focus. That, then, is to show some charming, well-developed characters do funny and cute things as they progress through their daily lives in high school. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I wholeheartedly believe in judging pieces of media based around the merits of their intent and execution, rather than dismissing them based on concept alone, and this anime is yet another shining example of that. I say this because the reputation and general stigma slice of life seems to have nowadays. This genre of anime was incredibly beloved once upon a time, back when anime wasn't nearly as popular as it is now in the West. However, as time went on, slice of life was seemingly tossed to the wayside in favor of shonen action series. This genre has been criticized by many people, especially angry goblins on Reddit, as being boring, slow, or generally lacking the complicated narratives or deep philosophical themes that the current popular shonen series have. This comes from all corners of anime fandom, but it's easily the most prevalent from fandoms of series such as motherfucking... My oh my aggression is beginning to become less passive. Anywho, to those who aren't fans of slice of life, that's okay. That's your own opinion, and I won't judge you for it. I'll admit, I haven't watched much shonen anime, but there's plenty that seem interesting to me. I also love well-written and engaging narratives as much as the next guy. However, I personally find the criticism that slice of life receives for not being plot-heavy to be incredibly unfair. I also fail to understand why shows like SpongeBob or The Simpsons don't receive such backlash, and are essentially allowed to get off scot-free, when they too don't feature a huge overarching plot, and have a very similar premise. Don't get me wrong, I love those shows too, but this entire thing is just confusing to me. I do not get why anime apparently has to have a complex narrative to be considered good, when the same standards aren't applied to every other type of episodic series in existence. Like I said, things should be judged on how well they execute their ideas, and slice of life anime are walking proof of that. With that said, I don't care that Azumanga Daioh doesn't have a complex storyline, because the things it does try to do are executed pretty much perfectly. This right here is the exact reason why this anime is so special to me. It's a character-centric comedy series with phenomenal characters. Each one of them is funny, cute, charming, fun, and most of them are all those things combined. This series also has plenty of substance to it, and makes up for the lack of plot with plenty of awesome interactions, where we get to watch the characters bounce off of each other, in scene after scene of pure comedy gold. I seriously can't express just how much I love these characters, so let's go over what makes them so special. To start, I'll talk about Sakaki, whose full name is unknown. She's what you would call a Shrinking Violet type character. Yes, I am a regular user of TV tropes, so you can shut the hell up. Anyways, Sakaki comes off as very intimidating to the other girls because of her tall height and reserved nature, with some even mistaking her for a sort of criminal or general delinquent. She comes off as tough, mysterious, or cool, and some of the other girls even admire her for this, particularly Kaorin. This image is only exacerbated by her natural athletic abilities. She often carries Class 3, her homeroom, through the yearly sports festivals and outperforms all the other girls. In reality, however, she's the exact opposite of this external image. Sakaki is a sweet, kind girl who has an immense passion for all things cute. The only reason she generally keeps to herself and seldom talks to anyone out of her own volition is because she's shy and somewhat insecure about her height and physique. Her passion for cute things revolves around animals, both stuffed and real ones. She particularly loves cats, but unfortunately can't have one of her own because her mother is allergic to them. Thus, she often goes for the next best thing. For instance, she often spends her free time looking at magazines full of images of cats, and even anonymously suggests a stuffed animal theme for the girls' first Culture Fest. Sakaki is probably the closest person to the main protagonist. She isn't the most normal character, but she's still who I would call the central protagonist if there is one. Additionally, she's involved in a really funny running gag involving animals. There's a certain gray cat she tries to pet named Kamineko because she finds it cute, but every single time, it opens its mouth wide and bites her hand. It just so happens that Kamineko is a big asshole and loves luring her over to himself so he can do this. This gag is done a multitude of times throughout the series, and it's quite funny whenever it happens. It even has some hilarious variations, such as when Kagura scares the cat off to prevent Sakaki from getting bit without knowing she wanted to pet said cat. Not to mention, it builds up to an incredibly heartwarming payoff. Later on, Sakaki meets a cat on a field trip to the typical Okinawa, which is essentially Japanese Hawaii, if you don't know. Think Emerald Coast from Sonic Adventure, I guess. And befriends it, but she unfortunately has to leave it behind at the trip's conclusion. This moment is genuinely saddening because the one time Sakaki actually befriends a cat, she has to leave it behind. Sometime after that, she and Chiyo get attacked by a pack of cats, including the one that bit her numerous times. But before these cats can harm anyone, the cat she befriended, named Maya, finds them and scares off the crowd of cats. Afterwards, Sakaki and Chiyo take Maya to the same vet that sees Chiyo's dog, Mr. Tadakichi, who oddly looks like Stan Lee, since the cat is weak after this encounter. Following this, Sakaki spends the night at Chiyo's, and while there, she finally gets a chance to enjoy spending time with her feline friend. And it's absolutely adorable and endearing watching her gleefully play with the cat. Hell, even Chiyo, arguably the cutest character in the series, finds these two adorable together, which even reassures Sakaki that there's someone out there she can open her heart to. Aww. If I'm being honest, I find Sakaki to be the most relatable member of the main cast. Personally, I'm not super outgoing, and I also love animals quite a bit. Oh yeah, and I've always been one of the tallest kids in any school I've gone to, so put two and two together, yeah, you can see why I think this. Now, I'm not saying I'm about to buy a Sakaki body pillow and start you know what, because that's frankly disgusting, nor am I necessarily saying she's my favorite character from the series. I'm just saying that I related to her the most. Next, I'm going to talk about Chiyo Mihama, most commonly referred to as Chiyo-chan by the members of the cast. Chiyo is the child prodigy of the series. She's a 10-year-old former grade schooler who's exceptionally talented and intelligent for her age. As a result, she skipped an unprecedented 5 grades to high school and remains at the top of the class throughout the entire series, getting consistent 100s on all the English exams, whereas the older girls struggle on them. She's even chosen by the other students as the class representative, and she organizes class events and other such things. Despite the immense responsibility she has for her age, however, she isn't magically 100% mature, and still possesses the general fears, naivety, and desires a typical child would have. Even though there's a 5-year age gap between her and the other girls, she gets along very well with her older classmates. Chiyo is a very polite, nice, considerate person. She's a sort of peacemaker, if you will, as she always tries to stop arguments and is generous by nature of her being a responsible young child. The other characters also find her insanely adorable, and as such, she's also seen as a sort of mascot for Class 3. While she is sometimes teased or otherwise taken advantage of by other characters, particularly Tomo, she's still friends with them and cares for them deeply, which they reciprocate. They just butt heads every now and then, just like real people do, making them feel like living, breathing people instead of just drawings on a screen. At the end of the day, these girls are incredibly close friends with each other, even if they don't always get along in the moment. She's particularly close with Osaka, who shares her naive, innocent nature, and Sakaki, who she shares an interest for cute things with. Sakaki spends a lot of time with Chiyo throughout the show, and often pets her Great Pyrenees dog named Mr. Tadakichi. Interestingly, Sakaki is also envious of Chiyo's cuteness, while Chiyo wishes he had Sakaki's stature and seemingly tough nature, an element that makes their relationship very engaging. She does admittedly miss the carefree lifestyle of being in grade school, but she still works incredibly hard to live up to her status as a high school student, and longs for when she becomes bigger and stronger. Unfortunately, Chiyo is not very good at sports, and often comes in last or close to it in the school sports festivals. She is, as I've said, 5 years younger than her peers, and is comparatively very small. Because of this, she doesn't possess the physique necessary to be competitive, lacks confidence in her abilities, and sees herself as a burden to the class team, which is yet another reason she wishes she was as tall as Sakaki. However, she's a devoted fan of the Yomiuri Giants, a Japanese baseball team, and as the player's signature. Hell, she even got into an argument with Tomo about them at one point. Besides that, Chiyo also loves cooking and cleaning, and often sings adorable songs while she does so. To be honest, Chiyo was one of my favorite characters in the series, and that's due in large part to how charming she really is. She's so ridiculously sweet and adorable that you'd swear she was created for the express purpose of making the entire cast constantly fawn over her. While she is rather intelligent, she's also very innocent, as I said, and it's this innocence that makes her such an endearing and lovable member of the cast. Whatever she does, be it singing while baking cookies and cakes, walking around the cultural festivals in a penguin suit, which oddly enough reminds me of the penguins from Super Mario 64, so bonus points for that one, or anything in between, Chiyo was a consistently charming and adorable character, and she's impossible not to love. Enough about her. Let's talk about Tomo. Self-proclaimed wildcat high school girl Tomo Takino is the Genki girl of the cast. If you're not in the know on tropes, think someone like Amy Rose from Sonic the Hedgehog. A Genki girl is a very energetic character, most often female.
They're called Genki girls for a reason.
In contrast, however, Tomo was a quintillion times more energetic than Amy ever was. So much so that the first thing she says includes the word Genki. Do I really need to discuss further? Because that sums her up pretty well. Tomo is incredibly hyperactive and competitive, despite being a non-athletic slacker. She constantly interrupts class and rarely does her work, and she receives rather poor results on her exams. She's also fairly inconsiderate about the consequences of her actions, a quality which often annoys those who are around her. Especially Yomi, who has been her classmate since grade school. One particularly standout moment involves her trying to whack Yomi with a lunch tray, but she accidentally hits Miss Yukari instead, which leads to a hilarious scuffle between the two. She is capable of achieving things if she applies herself, as evidenced by her admittance into the prestigious high school the girls attend, but she doesn't do so. She seems to have a sort of pride in her low test scores, and as such she's the leader of a group called the Knuckleheads, made up of her, Osaka, and Kagura, all of whom receive lower results on their exams. She's additionally a massive fan of Lupin III, a manga series from the 1960s, and she hilariously tries to model her hair after Fujiko Mine during the girl's third and final year of high school, which, yes, by the way, high school is only 3 years in Japan instead of 4. Not to mention, she also teases Chiyo for her short height and wealthy background, and Yomi for her weight and constant obsessive dieting, although those two are still close friends with her. Not sure why all the wikis act like she somehow mercilessly torments them and there's serious animosity between her and those two, because there's not, but whatever. But, that said, doesn't she sound kind of familiar? Yeah, Tomo represents every annoying idiot in high school. During my own time in high school a few years ago, there were plenty of these kinds of people, especially in big classes. This type of person got somewhat on my nerves back then because they seemed to be deliberately trying to piss off the teacher, but looking back on those things makes me laugh. I want to tell a couple of short stories here, so bear with me. One time in an economics course I took in senior year, the teacher was trying to teach the class, and a bunch of guys were talking and causing a general ruckus. This wasn't too out of the ordinary. Trust me, that class was a fucking mess. Like, imagine the most unruly, misbehaved class, and then multiply that by 10, and there you go. You got half of what that economics course was like. Then, this one person, who always bothered teachers with off-color remarks, said something that pissed my teacher off so much that he got into a bit of a shouting match with the person. It got so crazy that the principal came in. The teacher shouted something like,
"Oh, you think you're a tough guy, don't you?"
And as he was walking to the office, the two kept arguing until the kid went around the corner. This shocked me when I actually witnessed it, but now, I just think it's really hilarious. Another such thing happened in junior year. I was in an oceanography elective, and the teacher, who was also the dean of students, talked to a kid who got detention in the study hall just a minute previously. They got into an argument with the kids swearing, and then the teacher went on a rant, including shouting,
"I'm the one who runs this school, not you! You stole punch punk ass bitch!
or something like that, at the top of his lungs. So much so, I could actually see the spit come out of his mouth and his face go beet red. Oddly enough, there was even a time in that aforementioned economics class where a wasp got into the classroom, which caused a pandemonium, something that happens very early on in Azumanga Daioh with a cockroach, an event Tomo was involved in. So what's my point in telling you all this crap? What I'm trying to illustrate is that Tomo is an incredibly realistic character archetype, one who seems to take pleasure in being an annoying shithead. Even though she's occasionally annoying to the other girls in the show, she's responsible for some of the funniest moments in the entire series. This is kinda hard for me to put into words, but her antics are funny in the same way looking back on those stories I told you is funny. While we hate the inconveniences and stupid shit that might happen to us in the moment, looking back, they're funny memories that we all reminisce on and have a good laugh about. I know, some other guy brought this up in his retrospective on this series, but it bears repeating. Tomo represents this aspect of high school incredibly well. She's the perfect comic relief that I enjoy the inclusion of, and it's her occasional overstepping of boundaries that make her such a hilarious character to watch. Next in line is Koyomi Mizuhara, referred to as Yomi by the cast. Funnily enough, her name is a pun that means read between the lines, fitting as she's the only one of the main girls to wear glasses. She generally acts as a voice of reason, and is the most mature and serious of the cast, even more so than Chiyo. She is, for the lack of a better term, the most normal of the girls, and essentially represents the average Joe. She's the perfect comedic foil to the other girls' relative silliness, especially that of Tomo. As I said, Yomi has been her classmate since elementary school, but even though she should be more or less used to her bullshit by this point, she still manages to get irritated when pushed enough, especially since Tomo only attended this prestigious high school so she can annoy Yomi. Jesus Christ, this series is comedy gold. She's a rather intelligent and athletic girl. Her grades are right up there with Chiyo's, and she does rather well in the school's sports festivals, although not quite as well as Sakaki or Kagura. Despite these things, however, Yomi is also insecure about her weight, and constantly diets, and she struggles on her college entrance exams, being the last of the girls to pass them. She's also hilariously bad at singing, as demonstrated by one time the girls sang karaoke around Christmas, and things tend to go wrong for her. I already mentioned the entrance exams like literally 2 seconds ago, and at some point the girls all go to Magical Land, an amusement park. However, Yomi unfortunately gets struck with an illness and can't go, and she gets a phone call from the others telling her how much fun they're having. Ouch. With that said though, Yomi isn't a completely innocent person. She likes to act like she's completely above the occasionally childish behavior of her peers, but she really isn't. For example, when asked what she wants for Christmas, Yomi says 10 million yen, or the equivalent of roughly She also gives Osaka some food too spicy for her to handle as a prank, which causes her to have a severe case of the hiccups for nearly an entire day. So yeah, like I said, Yomi isn't entirely innocent, so you could say the bad things that happen to her are slightly karmic in a way. While she's not one of my favorites in the series, Yomi is a very entertaining character, and her interactions with the other members of the cast are always quite funny. And that's really all I have to say about her, to be honest. Next up is another character that I honestly don't have that much to say about. Kagura is sort of a boisterous bruiser type, and has a somewhat brash personality. Initially she's a member of Class 4, which is taught by Miss Kurosawa, or Niyamo for short. She doesn't become truly acquainted with the other girls until their second year, when Yukari chooses her for her class as a means of winning the sports festivals. She devotes a lot of time to the school swim team, and is almost as good an athlete as Sakaki is. Because of this, she's often seen with a pronounced tan during summertime. She also tries to act as a friendly rival of sorts to Sakaki, both competing with her in various things from softball to even lunch, while also acting as a good friend of hers. The thing I love most about Kagura is her relationship with Tomo. Like her, she has a lot of energy and is rather apathetic towards school, even being the member of the Knuckleheads to receive the lowest exam scores, but she's different in that she doesn't overstep boundaries or constantly get on others' nerves. Tomo often clashes with her in hilarious ways, such as when the two argue about Santa Claus or when Tomo knocks down her tent during the third sports festival. It's not as common as the laugh-out-loud bickering that Yomi and Tomo constantly engage in, but it's just as funny as that when it does happen. However, unlike Tomo, Kagura is a lot more sweet and sensitive, and can be prone to tears, particularly when she thinks she disappoints someone. She's very kind and soft on the inside, and when brought out, this good nature makes her very eager to help others. She's also quite good friends with Chiyo, and even spends time with her one night in one of the most calming, relaxing moments of the series. While I do consider her one of the overall weaker characters, that's by the standard of Azumanga Daioh, so by all rights, she's a quite well done character when compared to the general standards of characterization for media. My god, what a mouthful. Oh yeah, and the gamer in me appreciates how she owns a PS2, so that's cool. Next is Kaorin. This is another character that I don't have that much to say about, but I still want to talk about her. Kaori, usually called Kaorin for whatever reason, isn't a particularly deep character. The main trait that she has is her adoration for Sakaki. And when I say that she has an adoration for Sakaki, I mean it. She absolutely loves Sakaki. Loves her. This is quite an interesting move. Usually these high school anime have a girl with a crush on a boy, but this is a case where the girl is a lesbian instead. I'll admit, I'm gonna sound like an absolute jackass when I say this. This dynamic is kinda cute. I know, I sound like a complete loser when I say that, but I don't care. Even with that said, the relationship has an element of humor to it. The thing that makes it so funny is the fact that Sakaki is entirely oblivious to it. Kaorin always wants to hang around her, and has a sodden apocalypse in her panties every time she sees her, but Sakaki doesn't notice and only considers Kaorin a friend. It's portrayed in a way that you'll want to see her get together with Sakaki, but in a way you don't take it too seriously. It's sort of like the Burns-Smithers dynamic, except it's more so charming and funny than just pure comedy. In addition, her relationship with Mr. Kimura is a great example of dark comedy. Kaorin hates him and considers him nothing but a pedo, but Kimura is basically to Kaorin what she is to Sakaki. Except far more creepy to the point that Kaorin is basically traumatized by the guy. It's one of those cases where you feel like an absolute asshole for actually laughing at it, but it's done with the perfect amount of levity to be funny. And that's really it for Kaorin. Anyways, next up is the teachers. The two main ones are Yukari Tanizaki and Minamo Kurosawa. Yukari, also known as Yukari-sensei, is what happens when the Genki girl becomes a teacher, while never having left high school mentally. She's the teacher of the girls' English class, Class 3, and is very much one of them, even having been a former student at the same school. She's almost always late for class, she's lazy, and seems more dedicated to making her class beat the other one in each year's sports festival than actually teaching them like she's supposed to. Yukari, like Osaka and Tomo, is responsible for some of the funniest moments in the series, especially whenever she butts heads with the latter. Even though their personalities are basically the same, cocky, competitive, energetic, and inconsiderate, the two are still usually at odds with one another. The fact that the writers managed to pull this off is nothing short of impressive. Yukari also has abysmal driving skills, to the point that she actually emotionally scarred Kaorin and especially poor little Chiyo for life. It made Osaka briefly lose her usually calm attitude. The scene where we actually see her driving for the first time, the one where Kaorin and Sakaki ride with her, was also absolutely hilarious, and I especially loved it so much because they reminded me of the reckless driving missions from The Simpsons Hit and Run, a game I had very recently beaten before watching this anime.
Yeah, my mind makes weird connections like that. Moving on.
Miss Kurosawa, called Niamo, is essentially the Yomi to Yukari's Tomo. Whereas Yukari is a Genki girl prone to acting very childish, Niamo is a mature, responsible adult. She's the teacher of Class 4 in the gym period and has been a colleague of Yukari's ever since they were younger. The two have a hilarious relationship that, like I hinted at, is a parallel to Yomi and Tomo. The two constantly butt heads and are involved in countless funny moments where the two masterfully bounce off one another, especially whenever alcohol is involved. Niamo wants Yukari to act her age, something she absolutely does not do. However, like Yomi, Niamo isn't entirely above childish behavior, since she often gets drunk. One time over summer break, she even gives the girls a special talk while in a drunken stupor. You might be able to guess what this talk was about. It's what I like to call the supreme knowledge of the universe. That certain topic that signifies when one has progressed past youthful innocence, or rather, ignorance. In all seriousness, this scene is gold, and the way the girls act like she gave them some deep philosophical discussion the next morning never fails to crack me up. Anime's last one. Mr. Kimura is an interesting one. He's the last of the teachers, and very clearly shouldn't be one. He's a massive weirdo, and even admit the only reason he became a teacher is, and I quote, "because I love high school girls, that's why." Okay, the FBI didn't hear that. I mean, he isn't completely devoid of admirable qualities. He has a wife and kids and regularly donates to charities. But the unfortunate thing is that said qualities were wasted on an otherwise creepy pedophile. However, his little kid diddler status is done in a completely comedic way, and his sheer desperation to get some high school girl ass, along with the consequences he faces, are priceless. I seriously can't get enough of this guy, and whenever he's on screen, my sides explode. It's really that simple. The main girls gave me the most laughs overall, but I'd say the things Kimura does provide some of, if not the funniest comedy in the series. He's one of the characters that's purely comedic instead of the balance of cute and funny the main girls have, which makes him an excellent addition to the already stellar cast. But there's actually one more character I need to discuss. You may notice that I've missed this character in the previous section of the video. I've mentioned her numerous times, but I haven't yet talked about her in detail. The last character I need to talk about is Ayumu Kasuga, more often referred to as Osaka by her friends and teachers. Oh boy, let me tell you, there is a reason I saved her for last and gave her her own dedicated section of this video. There's so much that I have to say about Osaka that it warrants doing so. Long story short, Osaka is definitely my personal favorite member of the Azumanga Daioh cast, and she's essentially a personification of the entirety of the series itself. She's funny, cute, charming, endearing, and just plain fun. Ayumu Kasuga is a transfer student from the Japanese city of Osaka, which I've heard is the Japanese equivalent of either Alabama or Brooklyn, who now comes to this prestigious Tokyo high school. Once they learn of her city of origin, the other girls begin to expect that she'll act like the typical Osakan stereotype. Loud, inconsiderate, annoying, and almost like a hillbilly. Basically, imagine Cletus Spuckler from The Simpsons, but if he was a high school age girl instead. Wow, what a fucking analogy. Tomo even asks Yomi to pretend to roast her, since she thinks the transfer will have really good comebacks, which leads to a pretty funny moment where she pretends to be taken aback and throws herself into some desks. She also gives Ayumu the nickname Osaka, which sticks so well it essentially becomes her actual name, and Ayumu does in fact speak the Osaka Ben dialect instead of standard Japanese. However, once Ayumu arrives at the school, it quickly becomes clear that her behavior could not be any more opposite from what the others expected. In reality, Osaka, which I'll refer to her as from now on, is somewhat slow and rather spacey, at least when compared to a typical Osakan. She's a very gentle, polite, and calm person, often seems to be in her own world, and like Chiyo, she isn't athletic. In fact, she was the only person to lose to Chiyo in a race. She often has her head in the clouds, daydreams frequently, commonly falls asleep during class, says odd things out of the blue, and comes to weird conclusions. She's the resident cloud cuckoo-lander of the series. For instance, during the cockroach scene, Osaka only seems interested in chasing eye floaters, as she puts it. Also, during the second sports festival, she wanted to run the obstacle course just so she could plant her face in the flower, which she found funny. She's also a member of the Knuckleheads because of her poor exam results, and the time she falls asleep in class upset Miss Yukari. You could say the inner machinations of her mind are an enigma, as a wise man once said. However, Osaka is not retarded by any means. She just has a mind that works very differently from that of most people. For one, she's incredibly good at certain types of riddles, and she always tends to point out obvious things that many others gloss over. She was the only person to notice Kaorin's infatuation with Sakaki, and she has an impressive knowledge of topics such as marine biology and obscure kanji. She seemingly has an obsession with sea slugs and finds it funny to repeat herself, which is notably demonstrated when she's eating while on the class trip to Okinawa. Additionally, Osaka loves horror stories and is one of the girls who's brave enough to tell them, and she's a great singer, much like Sakaki. In contrast to most of her friends, Osaka always keeps a quiet mood, and is only once caught in a fit of anger near the end of the series, when Tomo improperly spits her chopsticks, something she loves to do. Because of this, her interactions with the other members of the cast are always a treat due to how her silly nature bounces off of them. As I mentioned before, Osaka is easily the closest with Chiyo, mostly because of their similarities. Both of them aren't great at sports, but it goes deeper than that. These two both view the world with the same sense of childlike innocence and wonder as each other. Chiyo serves as a sort of protector for Osaka, and often brings her back down to earth whenever she starts to theorize about doing something potentially dangerous, like when she tugs on her sleeve when Osaka considers jumping off the roof to see if she could fly. As such, Osaka considers Chiyo to be her closest friend of the other girls, to the point where she actually cries at the thought of possibly being separated from her at the start of the second year. However, she thankfully gets put into the same class as her again, which is a pretty heartwarming moment that makes you genuinely feel happy for her. She's also involved in a very funny recurring gag of her own. Osaka seems almost obsessed with Chiyo's pigtails, and hilariously postulates various things about them, such as the possibility they could be detachable, giving her the ability to fly, or even keeping Chiyo alive. She also imagines Chiyo's father as a supernatural yellow cat-like being who speaks in heavy English, so there's that too. Not to mention, when she hears about Chiyo's plans to move to the United States for college, she imagines various scenarios, like the country being controlled by a crowd of tiny Chiyo-chans. These moments are very charming and funny, and they're some of the highlights of the series in my book. I seriously can't express my enthusiasm for Osaka as a character enough. Whether she's planting her face in flour with that adorable little giggle, like splitting her chopsticks like it's the most amazing thing ever done by man, or anything in between, Osaka is without a doubt my absolute favorite character in the series. Not to mention, I also find her to be the most charming and cute member of the cast, somehow even more so than Chiyo. It really boils down to the combination of her soft voice, big eyes, and awesome smile. I won't sugarcoat it. I honestly think Osaka is the most adorable human character in the history of all fiction. No, I'm serious. Not only is she responsible for some of the series' funniest moments, not only is she an amazingly written character that's a large part of why this anime is so charming to me, she's also an adorable, lovable little bundle of moe, and I wouldn't have it any other way. She really does strike a perfect chord. She's the perfect balance of making me laugh and warming my heart at the exact same time. And in this sense, she's the perfect poster child for the series as a whole. I said she's the entire thing personified into one character for a reason. She represents the absolutely perfect mixture of cuteness and comedy that Azumanga Daioh is. And with that, I tip my hat to the creators of this series and those who worked to bring it to life. That really does it for the characters of Azumanga Daioh, and by now you should be well aware of the fact that I love them all. Each one has their own strengths, and they all come together to form an incredibly memorable, charming, and downright hilarious cast, and fully solidify why I adore the anime so much. So now that I've talked the more general stuff, why not go into the specifics and discuss some of my favorite episodes from the series. I love every last one of them, but these ones are the episodes that stick out to me the most and are the ones I immediately remember whenever I think back on Azumanga. I'll try my best to be brief with each one of these, because if I analyzed every one of these in painstaking detail, we'd be here all fucking day. And I have to sleep at some point. I'll admit, there's about half of the series here, so this will probably take a while anyways, but let it be known that I tried my best to be concise here. So let's do this, the episodes that stood out the most to me. First one on the menu is the second episode, referred to as Osaka's Day. To most, this may seem like a fairly unremarkable episode of the series, and it might even be somewhat strange to you that this early episode is one of my favorites, but it's that way for a reason. To me, this is one of the series' funniest episodes, and of course, it focuses on the best girl, Osaka. Why wouldn't it be one of my favorites? Azumanga Daioh has several episodes dedicated to a character, also known as the Limelight episodes, where you essentially spend a day with them. The character acts as a narrator, introducing themselves and explaining the various aspects of their lives, including how they view their peers or the general mindset throughout the day. Osaka appeared briefly at the end of the previous episode, so immediately afterwards, she gets her own so she can be fully fleshed out and established for the rest of the series ahead. This episode has, like I said, numerous hilarious scenes, the first of which happening immediately as it starts. Osaka is seen walking to school, but is stuck at a crosswalk with several other people around her. She introduces herself and explains how different life in Tokyo is to how it was back in Osaka. While she does this, though, the crosswalk turns green, but she doesn't notice because she's too busy narrating. Osaka tends to focus on the thoughts she has so much that it drowns out the rest of the world around her, thus making her miss her chance to cross. Once she realizes this though, the light turns red again, and she's stuck having to wait. Needless to say, this is a great note to start the episode on. Throughout the rest of the episode, there's several other standout moments, like the absolutely side-splitting cockroach scene where all Osaka does is chase eye floaters, Osaka and Chiyo hilariously hitting each other with a volleyball repeatedly, but the real fun begins when we reach the cafeteria scene. The girls are eating lunch together, and as a prank, Yomi gives Osaka some spicy food, knowing full well she has a weak tongue. Immediately afterwards, Osaka gets a case of the hiccups, and the other girls then try numerous ways to cure them. This, for me, is the funniest part of the whole episode. It's just so much fun to watch them think of all these weird and obscure remedies for the hiccups, like having Osaka drink while holding her breath, or while balancing the cup on chopsticks, or having Tomo whack her on the back, then punch her in the chest, poke her in the eyes, pull her tongue, you know, the usual stuff you do to cure hiccups. Somehow, though, this stuff ends up working. As the girls are talking, you notice that Osaka is no longer hiccuping. However, immediately after this, you know exactly what happens afterwards. Tomo immediately suggests trying to do what they did to Osaka to cure her. This section of the episode never fails to make me laugh out loud. That's also not even the end of the episode, since in the very next scene, we see Osaka have a charming conversation with Yomi, and after that, there's another section of pure comedy gold. Osaka gets quite bored in class, as she's often prone to do, and thus a scene structured almost like a YouTube video plays out, where Osaka makes several contemplations about Chiyo and her pigtails. These include the two pigtails being linked together, being detachable, and her receiving new ones as a Christmas present. However, it's revealed that this is all a dream, and she actually fell asleep in class, upsetting Miss Yukari. So guess what happens next? She yawns, and then falls right back to sleep. This entire episode is great. It's cute, it's funny, and it establishes this series' sense of humor very early on perfectly. The first episode was pretty funny, but this one is, in my opinion, where the show really starts firing on all cylinders. The next episode that stands out to me actually isn't a single episode, but rather a group of 3. These are the summer break specials, which take place during episodes 5, 14, and 22. I grouped them together because the common thread of the premise. The girls' first semester of the school year is over, and yes, Japanese school years are divided with winter and not summer, and now it's time for their summer break. Each time, the cast goes to Chiyo's summer home, and essentially spends their time there before the second half of the school year. This home is near a beach, so it's the perfect place to go for the summer season. One running gag that permeates through all 3 episodes is Yukari's driving, because yes, the 2 teachers drive this girls to Chiyo's summer home, because that will end very well. I already mentioned this, but she's absolutely abysmal at driving. Imagine if SpongeBob was a high school teacher, and there you go. Her car, a 1980s Toyota Corolla, is in absolutely terrible shape because of her reckless driving, and it's a mystery as to how she even has a license, assuming she does have one, or is allowed to drive in the first place. She's so bad at it, in fact, that anyone who rides with her is emotionally scarred, including the likes of Osaka, Sakaki, Kaorin, and especially Chiyo-chan, who goes to hilarious lengths not to be subjected to the experience again, like renting an SUV or immediately rushing into Niyamo's car, who's a much more gentle driver. The only person who actually enjoys the experience is Tomo, because of her reckless nature that Yukari shares. We don't actually get a glimpse of her driving until episode 22, the final summer break. Sakaki and Kaorin are stuck with Yukari this time, as we see her do things like leave the car in reverse by accident and act like she's in a race with Niyamo, which leads to them running a red light and seemingly getting into some sort of accident. Several of these episodes also have their own scenes that make them stand out from one another. For example, the first summer break shows the girls telling scary stories and includes the hilarious fireworks scene. Osaka tries to play a little prank on Chiyo by putting a firecracker under her ass. However, when it goes off, Osaka is the one that gets spooked, and Chiyo barely even notices. The second summer break has the adorable bike scene, a charming little friendship moment between Osaka and Chiyo, the infamous key scene where Tomo tosses Chiyo's key into the grass as a joke, and of course, the absolutely iconic sex talk given to the girls by Niyamo. Oh yeah, and that's not to mention the charming carnival scene, where the girls wear adorable summer kimonos and play carnival games to win things such as turtles or stuffed animals. The third summer break episode is a bit different, as going to Chiyo's house this time is seen as an opportunity for the girls to study for their entrance exams. Knowing them though, they procrastinate and enjoy their time back at Chiyo's summer home, because they know it's the last time they'll be able to do so before high school ends. I already mentioned that we finally get to see Yukari's abysmal driving skills in action, but you also have the hilarious scene where Yukari speaks in English with creative visuals resembling the Red Sea, thus sending Niyamo into a blue screen of death state. Countless moments where we see Osaka do frankly cute things, and of course, that time when a tired Osaka tries to wake up Yukari with a frying pan, but she ends up grabbing a knife by accident.
Osakaかよ.
Anyways, I think I've said enough. The summer break episodes are ones I always look forward to whenever I rewatch this series, and they're easily some of my favorites out of the entire 26 episode collection. Next up is another group of 3 episodes. Each school year of the girls' lives has a pattern of 2 or 3 types of episodes that show up in a particular order. The episodes immediately following the summer breaks are the sports festivals, comprising episodes 6, 15, and 23. These are probably my least favorite of these 3 episode groups, but I still enjoy them quite a lot. It's just that I find the summer breaks funnier, and a certain other type of episode to be cuter. These are sort of an in-between, but lean a bit more into the funny side. Essentially, the girls' school holds an annual sports festival in which the homeroom classes compete in various sporting events. Usually this involves track and field, but also things such as tug-of-war, a 3-person cavalry race, and even a bread-eating contest. These episodes are a fantastic opportunity for the girls' charming personalities to bounce off of each other in funny ways, and their variable athletic abilities only help with this. For example, Chiyo thinks she'll be a burden for Class 3 all the time, while Sakaki consistently wins each event she's involved in. Osaka also has several charming moments throughout these, and some of those are a few of my favorite character moments for her. That's also not to mention how these episodes are where Kimura especially shines, providing several scenes where my sides were in orbit. The first Sports Fest episode is probably the overall weakest, but it's still entertaining. It's the one that has the tug-of-war in it, and it also has the iconic Osaka shoe kick scene, where she kicks one of her shoes to see if it will land right side up, but right as it's about to hit the ground, a truck drives by and it lands on top of said truck. This one scene has become something of a meme, with tons of edits showing up online. Oh yeah, and there's the scene where Kaorin gets to live her dream and dance with Sakaki, before immediately being forced to dance with Kimura. The funny thing about this is the dual meaning to what she says, I could die. With Sakaki, it's because she's essentially in her own personal heaven, so if she dropped dead right at that moment, she'd be content. But with Kimura, it's because she's essentially in her own personal hell, and wants so badly to escape his grasp on her by any means necessary, even death. It's a brilliantly written moment that never fails to make me chuckle. The other two Sports Fest episodes are just as hilarious, and contain great moments like Osaka's absolutely heartwarming giggle when she plants her face in flour, the time the girls run a marathon, Kaorin getting to participate in the one-legged race with Sakaki, Osaka running like she's Mario with pea speed and competing in the bread eating contest, and the tent scene where Tomo and Kagura get into an amusing exchange. The ending of the third Sports Fest is also very touching. The girls don't end up winning the festival, as Nyamo manages to overtake Yukari in the final sprint. However, this doesn't get the girls down, as Chiyo mentions how she had fun, and that's really all that matters at the end of the day, to which Sakaki agrees. The girls have a charming little back and forth where they joke with each other, and you really get the sense for just how deeply these girls care for one another. It's just heartwarming, okay? Jesus, I'm sorry. This anime just really gets me going sometimes. Anyways, time for the last group of episodes, the Culture Festivals. Unlike the summer breaks and sports fests, there's only 2 of these, and they occur during the girls' first 2 years of high school. They always immediately follow the sports festivals when they do happen. As I hinted at, these more so lean into the series' cute side, featuring several moments that are incredibly heartwarming, though they're also very funny in their own right. Both of Class 3's events for these are planned by Chiyo, and she takes suggestions for the themes of each. The first one ends up being a theme to stuffed animals because of an anonymous suggestion from Sakaki. The girls make a cat outfit for one of them to wear, while the others put on fake ears and a button, making them even cuter than they already are. That honestly seems to be their entire goal for the cultural festivals, making the cutest possible event. Japanese culture is rather fixated on cute things after all, and as such, the events the girls plan for the festivals end up being wildly successful. This first festival also has a funny moment where Chiyo in the cat suit creeps out the other girls because of how it doesn't fit her. Sakaki has a few scenes where she fawns over stuffed animals, and the ending is supremely touching and heartwarming. In the evening following the festival, Osaka, Tomo, Yomi, and Chiyo all decide to go on a sort of victory parade. Tomo wears the cat suit, and the 4 march together with an amazingly colorful and beautiful sunset background. Much like the ending to the last Sports Fest episode, this moment really hammers home just how great of friends these girls really are. They may bicker, and there may be some conflict between them, but ultimately, they care deeply for one another. These scenes are in no short supply, and this is one of my favorites of them all. And I haven't even talked about the second Culture Fest episode yet. Oh my, episode 16, the second Culture Festival. This one is even cuter than the first, if you can believe it. This time the girls decide on a stuffed animal theme once again, but put a new twist on it, a stuffed animal cafe. This time they're less organized, and there's a whole sequence where Chiyo has the girls hurriedly get things ready because time is running out. They also agree on having Chiyo wear a costume and serve the cafe's drinks, but it takes a bit to decide what it will be. I think you know where this is going. The first thing suggested is what looks like a womp from Super Mario 64. Again, bonus points for that one. But this doesn't seem like a good idea. Instead, they go for something much cuter. Animal-themed hats that go along well with their cafe uniforms. Oh yeah, and of course, the thing that many people remember this episode for. Kaorin and her best friend Chihiro make what they call the special costume. If you don't know what this is, I'll just let the show do the talking for me. Holy Christ! Oh my god! Just fucking look at that! It's so fucking... Okay, I must compose myself. So yeah, this is the iconic penguin suit. As if Chiyo wasn't adorable enough already, then here you go. All the girls who lay eyes on this, including Yukari, Tomo, Nyamo, and several others, are immediately sent into a state of cuteness overload. Chiyo serves as a sort of mascot for the cafe, walking around the festival and serving its drinks, and the attendees of the festival absolutely love it. At one point, Chiyo and Osaka also spend some time together, complete with an adorable scene where Osaka feeds Chiyo because the costume is too big for her to reach her mouth. When they return to the cafe, it's absolutely packed, thus cementing it as a resounding success. Unfortunately, there isn't a friendship moment at the end of this episode, but there is a moment where Sakaki puts one of the stuffed animals on top of the penguin suit. That's cute. Overall, these Culture Fest episodes are incredible, and are some of my favorites in the entire series. They perfectly represent what Azumanga Daioh is to me. Charming, funny series with great character interactions, and with hilarious and heartwarming scenes one after another. The next episode I want to mention is episode 8, which is structured fairly differently from most others. It takes place at the turn of the new year, right around the end of the girls' first school year. In the episode, we see the New Year's dreams that several members of the main cast have. From my understanding, the first dream one has in a new year is traditionally seen as indicative of the luck one will have in the year ahead. However, these dreams are an excuse for the creators to put the characters into bonkers scenarios they wouldn't be able to otherwise. It begins by showing Osaka's dream, and of course it involves Chiyo and her pigtails. Why wouldn't it? It's Osaka we're talking about after all. In the dream, Chiyo is seen being able to fly using the pigtails, and they apparently even control her. This causes Osaka to freak out and attempt to save her, and she removes the pigtails from her head. However, this ends up killing Chiyo since her life depends on them in this dream world. Osaka is utterly shocked by this and uses her pigtails to fly away in shame. It might just be me, but I swear the way these flight-enabling pigtails work is essentially the same thing as the wing cap from Super Mario 64. Don't believe me? Alright, take a look at this. See what I mean? Anyways, I love this part. It's short, but I'm always opening to watching Osaka act silly because it's always a treat. She's just that great of a character. Anyway, the next one we see is Tomo's dream, which is side-splittingly hilarious. Tomo's fantasy reflects her real-life mindset, so she dreams of herself as an incredible hero, someone like Fujiko Mine from Lupin III, which I definitely butchered the name of, which as I said she's a huge fan of. She even runs and jumps like Sonic does. Again, here's the receipts.
Here we go!
In the dream, she saves her bank from a robbery, rescues a child's cat from getting run over by a car, and other such things, and because of this, some other girls are seen falling in love with her. However, funniest of all, she's seen absolutely smoking the other girls on an exam, getting a 100, within another 100, whereas people such as Chiyo and Yomi are seen getting zeros. And the cherry on top? She whacks Yomi repeatedly, repeating the same comeback she had towards Tomo in real life. It's seriously hard to put into words just how funny Tomo's dream is. Whenever I reach this episode on my subsequent rewatches, it kills me every single time. After this, several other characters' dreams are seen, and they reflect each character's deepest desires, just like the previous two. For example, Sakaki's dream involves her going to dinner at Chiyo-chan's place, and she pictures her father as the same paranormal yellow cat being that Osaka imagines him as.
本当の猫私は偽物の猫だと
I found you! Faker!
Faker? I think you're the fake hedgehog around here. You're comparing yourself to me? Huh.
It also involves various animals such as penguins because she finds them cute. Kaorin's dream similarly reflects what she truly wants. As you know, she's in love with Sakaki, so take a guess what she dreams of. Yep, she imagines herself as being able to live out that fantasy. She's approached by several of the girls wearing... So do you know those times when something from an old piece of media somehow lines up with current events and you have to resist the urge to make a terrible topical joke? This is one of those times. Ignoring that, these four threaten Kaorin, but before they can do anything, Sakaki comes in on horseback and rescues her. The two then ride away on the horse and can talk with each other. Kaorin asks if Sakaki can call her by her given name Kaori as a way of showing she considers her as an equal, and she does this. As the scene cuts to Kaori's mother calling her name to wake up because she'll be late to meet her friends at the New Year's shrine. After this, the girls are seen discussing the dreams they had. It's a nice way to conclude the episode, and the shrine scene is another charming friendship moment of sorts. Okay, there's only a few more episodes I want to discuss, and then we can wrap this behemoth of a video up. I was originally going to talk about the 13th episode where the girls take an English exam, but I figured this segment was long enough as is. That episode is great on its own and provides plenty of laughs, but it isn't one of the episodes that immediately comes to mind whenever I think of this series. One that does, however, is the 17th, which follows the cast as they celebrate Christmas together. This is easily one of the most heartwarming episodes of the entire series, naturally, since it's a Christmas episode. It has several of the usual laugh-out-loud moments throughout, like when the girls debate about whether pandas are black with white on them or white with black on them, the time they play dodgeball, and of course, the famous reindeer and Santa arguments, which get rather physical between Tomo and Kagura. However, the thing I truly adore about this episode is just how warm and cozy it really is. This entire series just has a calm and cozy atmosphere to it, and this episode is a perfect example of that. There's plenty of heartwarming moments, like how Sakaki imagines Chiyo's yellow cat father thing as Santa Claus, the time where the girls walk around together downtown, just soaking up and enjoying the beautiful snowfall and general joyous atmosphere at Christmas time, and the way Osaka says Merry Christmas is just downright adorable, okay?
Merry Christmas!
The karaoke scene is also golden, with Yomi's hilariously bad singing contrasting with the beautiful singing of Sakaki and Osaka. This episode is yet another time you get the full scope of just how close of friends these girls are. I could watch these characters for hours and hours and never get sick of it. It's such a shame that the series is only one short season long, because it's such a joyous time from beginning to end. Heartwarming episodes like this are exactly the reason why. And here we are, an episode I've hinted at absolutely loving before. If you've seen my Super Mario Sunshine review, you know exactly why I love this episode so much. It truly is one of, if not my absolute favorite in the entire series. It's simply incredible. The basic premise is quite simple. The girl's high school career is coming to an end within the next year, so to make up for the lack of a third culture festival, the classes are scheduled to take a field trip to the island of Okinawa, which, like I said, is the Japanese version of Hawaii, pretty much. It's a perpetually warm, sunny, tropical paradise, and the thought of going there excites all the girls, especially Chiyo, who was robbed of her grade school class trip because of her grade skipping. The girls spend the next month excitedly awaiting the trip, and once the time arrives, they pack and board the plane that's set to take them to the island. They get there, and oh my god! This place is so fucking beautiful! I mean, look at it! Look at the sun! The palm trees! Everything! Oh my fucking... Jesus Christ, I'm sorry, man. But can you blame me? This place is utterly beautiful in every way. I've already gone over why I love the tropical aesthetics in my Sunshine review, and this is no exception. Hell, I even mentioned this episode specifically in that review by name, and I think you can see why. The visuals of this episode are so amazingly well done, and that alone makes me love it. However, there's more to it. The cast is just excited as I am about this, and are seen doing numerous fun activities. They go sightseeing, observing things such as the building and the 2,000 yen bill, shisas, statues, and more. They also eat the local foods of the island, such as various types of champlu and, of course, and they go scuba diving in the Pacific waters near the Okinawan cliffs. On one of the last days of the trip, they also go to the nearby Irimidi Island, home to Irimidi cats. One of these cats actually befriends Sakaki, the first cat to do so, and she's completely stunned, entering a particularly severe case of cuteness overload, although she sadly has to leave the cat at the end of the trip. At the conclusion of the trip, the girls leave Okinawa happy, satisfied, and content with their time spent there. This entire episode is full of such charming moments for these characters, and as I've been essentially hammering into your head ad nauseum by this point, really shows how great their friendship is. Repetition! And it's supremely gratifying to see Sakaki finally get the love from an animal she so desired. And that's not even mentioning the gorgeous visuals, which I truly cannot praise enough. Here it is. The last episode I want to discuss, and fittingly, it's the final episode in the series itself. The illustrious episode 26, the graduation ceremony. Get ready and buckle up, because there's a lot to unpack with this one, and I will and truly mean that. This is one of the most widely praised and beloved episodes of the series, and for good reason. It's a perfect combination of all the series' best elements. The humor, the cuteness, heartwarming moments, emotional moments, it has it all. It's an absolutely perfect finale that wraps up the series wonderfully. The episode begins with the cast preparing for the graduation ceremony, which is set to take place later that same day. Chiyo realizes that she doesn't need to bring anything to school because of this, and gets somewhat excited because it's her first graduation. After all, she did skip from 5th grade all the way to high school. She says goodbye to Mr. Tadakichi and leaves for school. Meanwhile, as Sakaki walks to school, she realizes Kamineko attacked her all those times because he was scared of her imposing stature, and apologizes to him because she didn't know that she did it against the cat's will. But then she tries again, and Kamineko bites her one last time. For old time's sake, I guess. Shortly after this, the girls are seen arriving at their classroom, with the words, "Congratulations on graduating," written on the chalkboard. They talk for a bit, and Osaka arrives with a box of tissues, which she describes as real high class. As it turns out, she has hay fever, which has set in because it's currently early spring. The thing I love most about this part is Osaka's sneeze. Given which character we're talking about here, the sound she makes when she sneezes is one of the most adorable things you'll ever hear.
今
I imagine this scene is here to be sort of breather before the unbelievably emotional final 3/4 of this episode, so it's nice in that sense. So with that said, prepare yourselves. These next 15 minutes are some of the most bittersweet and emotional 15 minutes I've ever seen in a piece of media. The next part is the actual graduation ceremony itself. This part of the episode is referred to as 1,000 Emotions, which is a fitting title if I've ever seen one. The girls all walk into the graduation assembly and take their seats. The principal congratulates those graduating, as well as their parents and guardians who are in attendance, but not without Osaka hilariously interrupting him with her sneezing. The representative for those graduating is called forward, and Yomi and Tomo have this entertaining exchange right here. After this, the student who achieved the highest grades in the class of 2002 is called forward, who turns out to be none other than Chiyo herself. She goes up there and... This right here is the exact moment the tears start rolling down my face. Every single time I watch this, without fail. This entire graduation scene is the definition of a tearjerker. It's so sweet to see Chiyo receive this award because of her hard work, and then all the students congratulating her only hammers this home, especially since none other than Tomo is the one to start the celebration. This immediately leads into something that turns my crying into outright sobbing. The entire crowd sings an incredibly bittersweet graduation song, and as this goes on, you're shown a montage of the locations that the series took place in, from the classrooms, to the halls, to the pedestrian bridges over the roads, and more. While this happens, you see Chiyo burst into tears, and honestly, I can't help but do that right along with her. I mean, just take a look at this. Tell me you find it hard not to cry at that. Now multiply that feeling by 26 episodes, 3 in-universe years, and the countless funny, cute, and otherwise cheerful moments you've spent with these characters, and you'll truly begin to understand the sadness of this scene. After this, we return to the classrooms, as we see the final time the classes spend time together as their homerooms. Yukari is sad because she lost her wallet. Yeah, these next several minutes are more or less entirely focused on comedy, which helps to alleviate a bit of the sadness from the previous scene. Not that that's a bad thing, necessarily, I'm just saying. The girls then set up a donation box, which does nothing but upset her further. He then solemnly says goodbye, but before the girls can leave, Niamo shows up and gives Yukari her wallet, which she found for her, and that's enough to cheer her up, and she gives a hearty farewell to her students. The students then thank their respective teachers. Oh yeah, and there's this chestnut. So there's that, and they all spend their last day as classmates together taking pictures with each other and things such as that. We then see Kagura alone in the classroom, who is incredibly sad over the end of high school. Yukari finds her, and Kagura says she wants to take something with her as a way to remember her time in high school. However, Yukari says that all you need is your memories of the time you spent with your friends, which is the greatest keepsake of all. This breaks Kagura down into tears, and she thanks Yukari as the tears once again roll down my own face. Yomi is then seen expressing concern over whether or not she'll get accepted into her university of choice, and Osaka does this with her good luck charm. My god, she's just so precious. Anyways, Yukari and Kagura find them, and the girls prepare to go home. Yukari then leaves them, and as she walks away, we get what may just be the single greatest tearjerker in the entire series. This is easily the most powerful moment in the whole thing, which is saying a lot. God damn it, that's some powerful stuff. I can't even begin to describe just how unbelievably amazing this scene is. I was already crying before this point, but this part is where it all comes out, and I'm not afraid to admit that. It hits me in just the right way for that. By this point, you spent 3 years with these girls. You've gone through their high school experience alongside them. You've seen their daily lives, along with the cute, funny adventures they've gone on, and enjoyed those things along with them. You've watched them grow and become closer and closer to one another, but now the time has come for their graduation. These things are coming to an end, and the girls will have to go their separate ways. This, along with that shot where the girls bow to Miss Yukari and give her a sincere thank you from the bottom of their hearts. Oh my god, it's such a beautiful moment that I couldn't help but cry my eyes out. If this episode ended here, it would already be a masterpiece, but there's still one more scene. One more loose end to tie up. After this, you see Yomi awaiting the decision of whether or not she was accepted into her college of choice. The other girls are already ready to go to Magical Land once again, as a way of celebrating their graduation, but this upsets Yomi because she doesn't know if she was accepted or not. One last time, she has Chiyo infuse her good luck charm with the power to pass, but Tomo comes and says she didn't see Yomi's ID number on the board of students who were admitted. Yomi freaks out and rushes over to the board, but as it turns out, her fear was entirely misplaced. She looks at the board, and lo and behold, there it is, her number, 3661. Yomi is overjoyed by this, and the girls all celebrate for her, which once again hammers home just what kind of friends they really are to one another. I know, I keep saying that, but it's true. The episode, and by extension the anime, then comes to a close with the girls headed off to Magical Land one last time before they go their separate ways. Chiyo then gives an inner monologue which reminds us that even though they have to leave each other, these girls will forever be in the hearts of one another, even if they never get the chance to see each other again. We see one last shot of the girls walking together as the view pans up to the beautiful sky. One last time we're graced with the wonderful ending theme of the series, Raspberry Heaven. This time, I couldn't help but sing along. It's the perfect finisher for the series to close on, an incredible conclusion for its most tear-jerking episode, and furthermore, an amazing note to go out on. My god, I know, I've been talking about this series for a long time at this point, but can you really blame me? It's amazing and just really means that much to me. And I'm still not quite ready to wrap this up. I need to share a story with you guys, and I don't mean another anecdote of one of my own high school experiences. No, this is something different. Let's just say it's not only the series being so awesome that makes me love it and cherish it so much. It goes deeper than that. This part is going to get rather personal and discuss topics some people might not be able to handle, so feel free to skip to the conclusion with the time codes provided in the description. Okay, you ready? Here goes. Do you remember a while back when I mentioned in passing that this anime helped play a role in saving my life? I don't mean that it saved me from some sort of danger or anything like that, but it helped me get over a particularly nasty slump that I went through. So, as you're all aware by now, 2020 was kind of a shit year, to put it lightly. However, for me personally, it really wasn't all that bad. Throughout that year, I was able to do so many things I loved. I expanded my game collection considerably, getting loads of new consoles and games to experience, which I was able to do because of how school was let out for the last several months. I played countless games, from Ratchet & Clank, a staple of the year's early months for me, to Animal Crossing, which just devoured my time in the latter half. I even got my first capture card, allowing me to record my favorite games. And I started college as well. Needless to say, I was in a great mood for the entirety of the year, and I was excited for the next one. However, once 2021 arrived, it quickly became clear that this one would be different. Around my birthday in January, I began feeling wrong. I didn't know if last year's quarantine finally took its toll on me or whatever the fuck, but this feeling hit me like a freight train. I was falling into a slump, a sort of depressive episode, as it were. There wasn't one day that went by without me constantly thinking of distressing topics, ones I don't want to get into here, but it was rough. Life began to seem almost aimless, even pointless in a way, and I spent almost all of January like this. I thought moving back to college late that month would help alleviate those feelings, but it just didn't. In fact, it only exacerbated them. It sure didn't help that I would end up dealing with the most incompetent, bumbling, idiotic professor I've had so far throughout that entire semester, who wouldn't go a single week without missing class at least once, and never gave us notifications for it, or barely did. I would end up spending several months like this, and only had the motivation to do the basic essentials to get by every day or do schoolwork. Most of the time, I would only lay in bed and watch hours upon hours of YouTube videos. I mean, for God's sake, I started taking showers much less frequently, which caused my legs to ache from constant eczema. It was absolutely fucking terrible. I don't think I need to say that this was not a fun time, in the slightest. I would try to keep an upbeat mood and continuously try to convince myself that I wasn't in the mental ditch I was in, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true at all. This doesn't sound like a healthy way to handle it, I know, but at the time I really couldn't bring myself to do anything else. Oh yeah, and then my cat passed away. That was more or less the last straw, and cemented the first half of 2021 as one of the worst times of my life in recent memory. However, it wouldn't remain like this forever. This is where Azumanga Daioh comes in. Early on in the semester, I was browsing the internet and managed to come across it once again. I immediately remembered it the second I saw its name and looked into it once again. This really brought me back to simpler times, when I would remember the series periodically and get reminded of why I wanted to watch it someday, but I had never had the means of doing so. This time was different though, and I actually committed to watching the series, especially after I saw a certain YouTube video celebrating it. To my surprise, the English subtitled version was available in full on YouTube. Anime companies are usually trigger happy with their copyright, so I was obviously completely shocked. I thought I had nothing better to do, so I planned to spend that night watching the anime. Classes were canceled the next day anyway, so I had nothing to lose. Roughly 11 hours later, I was hooked on the series. I absolutely loved it, and it gave me a joy that I hadn't felt for a while. I'm not kidding when I say it was enough to help me out and recover from the rut I was stuck in. It was by no means instant, and it still took more time and other things to fully recover, but the series at least set me on the path of healing. Within the next several months, I would end up buying both this gorgeous DVD box set and poster, which I'm glad I did as the YouTube playlist was eventually struck down by copyright. I would watch it several more times in the coming months, and it would only get better and better each and every time. It also helped me cope with the aforementioned passing of my cat in early June, and was able to cheer me up whenever I was feeling down following that. To be honest, this series' ability to help me like that could have something to do with the ultimate core message it has. It's not an overly profound or philosophical theme by any means, but it's still just as important. Azumanga Daioh wants you to know that it's okay if you take things slowly, day by day, to simply enjoy your life. While the future may be rather terrifying to think about, and growing up may be a sad thing, that doesn't mean you won't ever be happy again. So while you can, try your best to enjoy even the simplest things in life. Seasons change, people grow, and hardships will always arise, but that's just a part of life. It's alright if you don't dedicate every waking moment to stress about the future, and it's perfectly fine to slow down and appreciate the here and now. I don't know if I'm digging too deep into a lighthearted series about a silly cast of high school girls doing cute things, nor am I sure this was the intent of the creators, but this is the sense I get from watching it. This message is something I've since taken to heart, and it's the thing that helped me realize that constantly stressing about the things I did was an easy way to suck out all the enjoyment out of living life, and gave me a feeling of reassurance. As a result, I managed to defeat the depressive episode, and I fully recovered around the start of summer. Perfect timing too, because it was obviously break time. I don't know if anyone's listening to this section, but if you are, it was satisfying to finally get all this off my chest. God bless Azumanga Daioh, and God bless its wonderful creators. It's truly a masterpiece, and I will forever cherish it because it's not only incredible on its own, but it actually played a large hand in helping me recover from a particularly nasty bout of depression, one which is far more severe and lengthy than any others I've ever had. Anyways, this video has gone on far longer than usual. I think it's high time we wind down for the day and wrap this beaver up. In the end, I don't really know what else I can say. I've thoroughly talked every aspect of this series into the ground by now, but that's just because I really do love it that much. It's a series I've known about for the better part of several years, but not ever got around to watching until now. But boy, am I sure glad I did, because doing so allowed me to discover one of my favorite pieces of media ever. Virtually every aspect of this series is pretty much flawless to me. The animation and art style are beautiful, fairly detailed, and straight up eye candy. This includes the character designs, which are simple but effective and carry a lot of charm with them. All of the music, from the production tracks used throughout the episodes to the fantastic character themes to the catchy opening song Sora Mimi Cake and the wondrous closing song Raspberry Heaven, makes my ears melt from how phenomenal it is. However, what really settles Azumanga Daioh as my favorite anime, one of my favorite animated shows, and one of my all-time favorite pieces of media is its exceptional characters. Like I've said, it's a character-based comedy with incredible characters. Their interactions are side-splittingly hilarious, they all have charming personalities that bounce off of one another masterfully, and their relationship with each other is very heartwarming, with numerous touching moments between them throughout the series. Osaka in particular is a really special one, and her funny antics, adorable qualities, and general charming nature make her one of my favorite characters from the history of fiction. Countless episodes demonstrate these qualities exceptionally well. All 26 of them are great from start to finish, but those ones I discussed earlier well and truly represent the best of what the series has to offer. The ending is also amazing, and it never fails to bring me to tears on all my subsequent rewatches. That's not to mention how it actually managed to help me out of a particularly nasty rut, and its themes of enjoying your life in the here and now strongly resonated with me. Azumanga Daioh is 26 episodes and roughly 11 hours of pure joy, happiness, and bliss, and it's a show that I can watch any day and not get sick of. You may notice that I didn't bring up a single shortcoming of any sort, and that's because I legitimately have no complaints at all with it. I am dead serious. I used to be rather in the middle or otherwise apathetic to the art form of anime as a whole, but after watching Azumanga Daioh several times and loving it with every fiber of my being, I'm excited to watch more anime. That includes many slice-of-life shows I've heard good things about, especially Nichijou, which I'm just dying to watch, alongside many action or plot-heavy shonen series that I've been gaining interest in for a while now. These series may even end up overtaking Azumanga as my favorite anime, but that remains to be seen. However, even if that does happen, there is and always will be a special place in my heart for Azumanga Daioh. I love it so very much, and I hope that this video will do to many others what that other video did to me. Convince you to give it a watch sometime. If you haven't done so, then you owe it to yourself to check the series out. It's a timeless classic, and is wholly worth experiencing for yourself. It's available on VRV for streaming, so all you need to do is start a 30-day free trial and you're good to go. I strongly recommend you do so. That's all for me, and always remember, every day is an adventure. Thanks for watching. Alright, and that's the end of this insanely long video. Finally. You know, I knew this would be a beefer going in, but I surely didn't expect it to be this long. I knew I would have a lot to say, but not this much. It's one of those cases where I thought, oh yeah, I can talk about this in like 30 to 40 minutes, and suddenly there's a 32-page single-space script staring right back at me. Anyways, this really is the end. It's time to move on to other things. I promise, more game reviews are coming soon. The next one will probably be a continuation of the mainline Mario Marathon I started back in June? Holy Christ. In any event, I appreciate you watching this, because this was a true passion project. Well, really all these videos I make are because the media in question is something I'm passionate about, but this one in particular stands out above many others in that sense. I really hope that this video brings more exposure to this wondrous series, because I find it rather underappreciated and overlooked these days. Hey, if this video does that, then mission accomplished. I'm glad to have introduced you to this masterpiece, so you too can love it just as much as I and many others do. Regardless, that's all I've got. Stay in school, don't do vegetables, yada yada. This has been Diamond Menor Studios, and I hope you have a blessed day.